The Field of 68 Media Network presents Red is the New Orange, a Syracuse basketball podcast.
Vince intercepts a pass, breakaway for the freshman guard, he flies and slams! Aerial assault from Judah Mintz.
Looking to go back door to Bell, they get it to a near corner three, knocks it down! Chris Bell, the sharpshooter.
Bringing you everything you need to know out of the 315.
Up top, Williams surges ahead, up with the right hand and in. A pretty up and under move from Benny Williams to beat his man.
Over to Taylor, he skips into the lane, puts up a floater, and drops in.
Let's get it started with your host, Ian Unsworth and Johnny Gadamowitz.
It's time to welcome in another friend of the pod here on Red is the New Orange. As always, Johnny Gadamowitz, Ian Unsworth with you. We got a very special guest today, John Eads. He's a sports reporter down in with WAFB in Baton Rouge. He's also a Syracuse alum, a former roommate of both myself and Ian, covers all things LSU. Had to have him on to preview the Orange and the Tigers coming up. But John, before we hop in hoops-wise, I got to ask you, rivalry week, how about watching Syracuse take down Wake Forest yesterday?
I love how you prefaced it with rivalry week, Johnny.
The fiercest rivalry in all the land.
It is to get to 6 wins. I mean, you think about that Trill Williams game a couple of years ago where he had that takeaway and that touchdown, that crazy play. That was only a 5-win season, but it seems like sometimes these teams play and they're both like 5-7. And the winner gets to the bowl game. A little bit of a rivalry. Appreciate the welcome. Good rivalry week, as many of, well, I don't think many of these people know yet. I don't think Ian's told them. Ian and I are from outside Ann Arbor, so we're big Michigan fans, and obviously we were fired up about yesterday. But yeah, good to see Syracuse get that win with an interim head coach. I don't think many of us saw that coming, and give these seniors a chance to play in a bowl game. I think making a bowl is something that we should expect from Syracuse every year. I think that's fair to say. So I think they met the expectation in an otherwise disappointing year. So good for the boys.
Eligibility in the same year you fire
Former Michigan quarterback Dan Villari actually playing quarterback at a Power 5 program.
Who would have
Not something I had on my bingo card this year.
Well, back to the hardwood. Getting back to the hardwood. Be sure you give us a follow. We're over on Twitter at F68_Cuse as a part of the Field of 68 podcast network. Be sure to check them out as well, giving you all sorts of coverage. Pick your team. They've got coverage on them. And obviously today our coverage centering around Syracuse and LSU upcoming Tuesday night coming up in Central New York. And John, as far as the Tigers are concerned, you know, sort of doing our homework here, a squad picked to finish second to last in the SEC preseason poll. Little bit of a rocky start to the regular season. Took Wake Forest to overtime, found a way to win the game, but losses to Dayton, losses to Nichols. I guess we'll kind of start here with just sort of asking you your take so far on sort of, you know, the overarching first couple of games here for the Tigers as we hit the tail end of November.
Yeah, this team is really like Pandora's box a little bit, Johnny. I don't think anybody knows what to expect because of everything that's gone on with this program. Recently, you had Will Wade, the American gangster, quote unquote, who committed pretty much every NCAA violation you could think of and had success here, you know, took LSU to the NCAA tournament, had them competing well in the SEC, but obviously he gets fired. He's now at McNeese down the road. And then you bring in McMahon from Murray State, a guy who won there, but every coach pretty much since the 80s that has coached at Murray State has won. They've had 3 losing seasons from what I understand since then. So, you know, what are we getting in this guy? Can he build this program? Year one, you had the NCAA investigation still looming over his head, over the program's head. So you didn't really know what was going to become of all this. In June, they finally completed that, wrapped that up, whatever. So now it feels like LSU could start the rebuild process. Last year, they had like nobody on the team. They had field
0 scholarship players when McMahon was hired. That is nuts.
They had to just field a team at all. It put an LSU basketball team on the court. So this year, it feels like they could start to, all right, let's build a program. Let's recruit. Let's get guys in here. But at the same time, they're still taking steps back, and it's really not their fault, I would say. They brought in all these transfers from Santa Clara, Vanderbilt, from Tulane, from pretty much everywhere across the country, which seems to be how college sports are these days. Jalen Cook is probably the biggest name. He averaged about 20 points per game with the Green Wave. but it was his second time transferring. Started at LSU, went to Tulane, now he wants to come back. Can't do that. So he hasn't gotten a waiver to play. That's been a big loss. And so what you have is a bunch of transfers, a coach who really, I don't think knows what his starting five should be. They've got 8 or 9 guys they play. They don't really know what the right combination is. So what do you have? Well, you don't know. So you lose to Nicholls State. You are leading against Dayton in that Charleston Classic, and you end up losing a close one. But it seems like they're taking small steps. You hold off Wake Forest, a game that you also led for a majority of it. You win in overtime. So I don't really know what we're watching with LSU, to be honest with you guys. There's a couple of players I know that are important. I'm sure we'll talk about that. But with this team, as you said, picked to finish 13th in the SEC, the head coach kind of laughed at that, kind of smirked like, yeah, okay. I think he knows some things that we don't know. We don't know what this team will be in a couple months. That's why the college basketball season is so long. Teams evolve, they change. But right now, they're rolling guys on the floor, and you don't know what they're going to do on any given night.
The interesting thing about LSU last year was even with that random conglomeration of talent, heading into SEC play, the team was 12-1.
Yes.
And the only loss they had was down to the wire against Kansas State, a team that last year uses that little baby song and powers themselves to an Elite Eight. The LSU looked like they really had it together at the beginning of last season, even with transfers galore. This dude, KJ Williams, averaged pretty much a double-double for the entirety of the non-conference. And then it just fell apart because you're playing SEC teams that scout you and are prepared for you. You're going to see them twice. Do you think LSU has found fool's gold early on, Jeeds? And with the win over Wake Forest, right? Keeping it close with Dayton, who is one of the best mid-major teams in the country?
Yeah, maybe a little bit because of what I just said and kind of what you were alluding to with last year and similar to this year. Like, there's really no way you can scout these teams ahead of time because they're bringing in players from colleges. In some cases, they barely played at those colleges, and others, how much Santa Clara tape you watch? Not that much. So you need to get a good sample size of what this team can do here in the non-conference. And that's what happened last year. Great start, 12-1. And then they just collapsed down the stretch. They only won 2 games the rest of the season, which is insane. But that's what happens when you bring in these transfers, right? Not only can you get a better look at them as the season plays itself out, but you're hurting for depth. And at a certain point, when there's cracks in the team, a strong team will fix those things over time. They didn't do that last year. And they didn't have game-changing players that night in, night out, will get buckets and be leaders of this team. And I'm not sure that they have that really this year either. I mean, how many times have we seen basketball teams succeed over the course of a long season when their team is basically made up of all transfers, right? I'm not sure it's going to happen this year. But with that said, I do think they do have a couple of pieces that I think will be night in, night out leaders of this team. So perhaps that will help. I'm not sure they've struck fool's gold, though, because when you lose to the Nicholls State Colonels, I'm not sure that that's any gold at all. In fact, that's what's that fake stuff they use for piping inside the walls of houses? I'm trying to think of what it is. Like
copper?
The fake version of that, though. Is there a fake version of copper?
The knockoff copper.
Man.
Yeah, you get what I'm saying. It's
my degree is in journalism.
Yeah,
you're asking the wrong people.
It was PVC piping when they thought it was copper. Let's just say that.
Fair enough. One of those key players you mentioned, John, Will Baker, leading the charge from a scoring standpoint. And I think it's interesting from a Syracuse standpoint, too, in that the Orange haven't really seen a team yet this year where the headliner is a big man, no less a 7-foot big man. And we have well documented the struggles of Naheem McLeod and how Syracuse has a lot of work to do on the interior. Baker's had a great start to the year. The Nevada transfer enjoyed a nice season last year, all Mountain West third team. Could this be kind of a launching pad for him in continuing a strong start to his season if he does have the ability to feast on a Syracuse, interior that has been lackluster thus far this year?
Guy's a mismatch. I mean, you talk about interior, but he will score and make you pay from the exterior as well. He's a stretch 5 in every sense of the imagination. Not a lights out, high volume 3-point shooter, but he keeps you honest because he will hit one, and that will keep defenses. They'll have that in the back of their head when they're playing, like Naheem McLeod's going to have to follow Will Baker to the 3-point arc. Malik Brown, who I think is probably the guy you'd want to play more in this game because he's a little bit more athletic and can keep up, I think, with Baker outside, inside. And one-on-one, Baker is very good. Got great post-up game. I saw him backing dudes down literally from the 3-point line all the way into the block and scoring. He's got a good touch around the rim. I think it's fair to say this is the best big man they've seen all season. If not that, at least the most versatile because of how he can affect the game. And that really helps out this LSU offense because around him, you've got a gumbo full of different guards that like to slash and cut and be physical and get to the rim and score that way. So his outside shooting ability really helps this offense. And this could be a launching pad with it being the SEC ACC challenge. I'm sure there'd be a lot more eyeballs on this game than there have been for other games LSU has played, but really people have been sleeping on this guy. He's been really solid all year long. He's been a real bright spot for this team. And some people didn't even think he would start coming into the season, but he has quickly taken control as being the leader of this team. I mentioned guys, night in, night out guys. This is one of those dudes who I think can get you 15 and 10 a night.
I miss the good old ACC Big Ten challenge. I'd much prefer that, but TV money is TV money, and it rules where it probably shouldn't. But I digress. On the guard front, Jordan Wright is probably their most experienced player. Agreed? Yeah. Plays at Vanderbilt, transfers over to LSU. Don't exactly understand the reasons for the transfer. Vanderbilt was in the NIT last year, made a nice little run. But again, Vanderbilt is Vanderbilt, and they're always the black sheep of the SEC, except for baseball. So all that being said, John, do you think Jordan Wright can stay with Judah Mintz on the defensive side of the floor? Because he'll probably score, especially after watching the Gonzaga game, the Tennessee game. Guards will score on Syracuse. But can guards stop Syracuse, especially when Judah's shooting upwards of 10 free throws a night?
Yeah, that's the thing. I think they have struggled a little bit with that so far this season. And Judah's the type of guy, we've seen him in person many times. If he wants to score, he will put himself in a position to score, whether that bucket falls or not. It depends on the game. Like it wasn't falling much in the Maui Invitational there, but he will put himself in a position to do that, whether it be getting to the free throw line or pull up game, whatever.
I'm sorry to interrupt, guys, but I'm drinking out of a Hawaii. The light's just not doing it justice. But I have a Hawaii-themed coffee mug. So one episode too late.
That's nice.
Did you get that in Hawaii?
Absolutely not. I've never been to Hawaii in my life. I think this is a grandparent purchase.
Classic.
As a reminder, John, don't want to interrupt you. Were you finishing up the point there, or?
I was just going to say Jordan Wright is very physical. He's 6'6", 230. Like he's a big dude. If I could be a basketball player, that's who I'd want to be. But with that said, Judah's got elite quickness laterally, and that's, how he puts himself in position to score, I think. So it's going to be a tough matchup, but that might be the matchup that decides this game.
And it's all coming up this Tuesday night against Syracuse and LSU. Before we continue our preview on the Tigers with John Eads, let's send it to Rob Doster with a quick word from our friends over at BetMGM.
As you guys know by now, we've partnered with BetMGM Sportsbook for this college basketball season. We're going to be using BetMGM lines to make all of our picks and predictions throughout the college basketball season. And we are going to have special offers for you, the listeners and the viewers on the Field of 68 each and every week during the season. If you haven't signed up with BetMGM yet, use the bonus code FIELD1500 and you will get up to a $1,500 first bet offer on your first wager on BetMGM Sportsbook. Here's what you got to do. Download the BetMGM app. Sign up using the bonus code FIELD1500. Deposit at least $10 and place your first wager on any game. You will receive up to $1,500 in bonus bets if that bet loses. Just make sure you use the bonus code FIELD1500 when you sign up. And remember, BetMGM is now available under one wallet in select states. As a New Jersey resident, this is super convenient for me when I have to go cover games in New York or Philly. When crossing state borders, just log into your existing account instead of having to create new accounts in each state that you go to. And most importantly, I got to let you know, we do have some fun stuff coming up for this college basketball season. Bet insurance tokens, college hoops odds boosts, my personal favorite, parlay odds boosts. So download the BetMGM app today.
Once again, we're joined by John Eads, a sports reporter with WAFB down in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Thanks so much for joining us. With Ian, I'm Johnny, as always. And John, on this show before, we've sort of discussed the importance of the early portion of the schedule for Syracuse, right? Obviously, you had the Maui games where you really got to use those as a litmus test against some of the top programs in the country. But looking at this Syracuse schedule over the course of the next month or so, me and Ian have documented it plenty. A lot of games out there where, we're going to find out a lot about this Syracuse team. This LSU game certainly is one of them. Is there a similar feel? Is there a similar vibe down in Baton Rouge right now? Obviously, the SEC and ACC, two totally different animals. But at the end of the day, how much importance from your vantage point is being placed on this non-conference portion of the schedule for the Tigers?
I think a lot, because especially after losing that game to Nicholls State, like, people down here are just looking for reasons to care about this team. Football is the top dog down here. And then, there's gymnastics, there's baseball, and basketball.
The women's team.
Women's basketball, of course, too. But the men's basketball team kind of gets lost in the shuffle. And that kind of changed when Wade was here and he was winning, whether it be legal or illegally, is up for debate. But people are just looking for reasons to buy in and looking for signs of hope. Like, hey, McMahon's the guy. He can turn this program around. And winning a game like this on the road, on national TV, ESPN2, with a lot of hope. I don't know if a lot of people will be watching, but probably a lot more people watching than typically do watch LSU basketball games. They're looking for reasons to buy back into this program and see that it's headed in the right direction. So to go on the road in a game where, as Ian said before, some people are thinking maybe LSU's favored by one. Really, it's a pick-em type game, a game that you certainly can win. It's not like a, heavily, you're a heavy underdog. This is a game I think you have to win to get those fans on board and to prove that, hey, we're improving, we're moving in the right direction. And I think that's where the mentality is for LSU fans right now looking at this one.
It seems like LSU defensively has taken some strides. Agreed?
Yeah, I'd say so.
The advanced metrics really like the block percentage, steal percentage, turnover percentage in general. Pretty much what Ken Pom is telling us is that LSU turns opponents over at a pretty high rate. With the Syracuse backcourt being the way it is, and sometimes the Orange's tendency to get skittish with the basketball or play too fast and get themselves in a hole, do you see this game becoming a track meet?
Tough to say, because LSU's been involved in some of those styles of games, but more so it's been kind of those defensive battles where they're kind of searching for ways to score the basketball, just with the way they substitute and they bring so many guys in and off the floor. I'm not sure I really see it that way, because Syracuse has really struggled to put up points this year so far. They haven't found that third scorer, which I know you guys have talked quite a bit about. And I think the same is true for LSU. It's Will Baker, it's Jordan Wright, and then it's who else is the third scorer. I mean, their last game against North Florida, I know it was North Florida, their third leading scorer came off the bench. So I'm not sure who that third guy, who that fourth guy is for the Tigers. The guards rebound well. They play good defense. They do force a lot of turnovers. And the way that you score against this Tigers team, in my opinion, is by running motions, running good sets, and kicking the ball out and hitting threes. That's kind of been their biggest deficiency, I would say.
That's
and
not exactly the
as we know,
Syracuse style of play.
Exactly, unless Chris Bell is on a heater, which is once a month, it seems. So I think it's going to be
you
a
did it in
low-scoring
back-to-back games last week.
Okay.
Your point's well taken. Your point is well taken.
Yeah. I mean, yes, he certainly can, but we've yet to see that consistency stretch beyond a 1 week timeline.
Right. And I guess to sort of follow up on that, John, for maybe some Orange fans up in Central New York who might not be as familiar with this Tiger squad, in a perfect world in your eyes, who is that third guy? I mean, we mentioned Baker, we mentioned Wright. Has anyone really impressed through these first few games? Is there anyone who was, picked to be more of a focal point that for whatever reason kind of falling flat?
Sigh of dejection in there.
Yeah, because I've watched so much tape, and it's just like it's a different guy every game that shows you a little bit of something. So it's really hard to say. I guess one intriguing guy, uh, it's hard because I pick one, but then the other is basically on the same level. Maybe Jalen Reed. He's a forward for this team, 6'10", 226, sophomore. So a guy that they recruited, brought in, have developed, played a lot down the stretch last season at that forward spot. And another guy like Will Baker that is big, can rebound well, but also can hit the three. So that's what's intriguing about this team is they have bigs that there's a couple of them that can hit the three ball if they get open out there. And it really stretches out that floor, and it allows the guys like Wright to slash in, and Trey Hannibal is another name, to just quick athletic guys to beat you one-on-one to get to the cup. So I guess I would say him, Jalen Reed, local kind of guy that can do a couple different things, but doesn't put it all together necessarily on a consistent basis every night. He might come in and hit a three, but that's about all he does, 3-and-D kind of thing. But I think he's got a lot of potential.
The pick and roll problems are something we've documented this year as well. Whether Syracuse struggles to defend a ball screen, whether it's off the ball with screens there, or just even guys drawing attention like Gonzaga did, getting into the paint and then kicking it out, or interior passing well. I would say this game, in my opinion, comes down to the guards. Whichever set of guards plays better will probably run away with this one, because if Judah gets Jordan Wright in foul trouble, or say JJ Starling's going off on whoever's matched up with him, then LSU might not have the horses to respond. And then again, Syracuse could run away with it, but I just can't see SU the way these past couple halves have gone for them. I mean, the Chaminade game notwithstanding, I don't think anyone's really too concerned about what happened there.
No.
But just the struggle to finish at the end of the half is what stood out the most for me with Syracuse. End of the first half against Colgate, you get blitzed. End of the first half against Gonzaga, you get blitzed. End of the second half, you also get blitzed. So that inability to finish, I think, is going to cause problems for SU if Jordan Wright and other experienced guys who've maybe, earned a couple stripes in other conferences are still on the floor for LSU.
I think so too. And I just don't know where the offense is coming from for Syracuse. I've seen it in flashes from LSU, but again, you could have the same questions about their guards and, who's scoring from that position as well. You could lean on experience. I mean, Jordan Wright has started now 4 years in the SEC, averaged over 10 per game over there, was a playmaker. As you said, it was kind of questionable that he transferred, maybe just looking for more PT and unquestioned PT. He's also a local kid. He played at local high school here that Derek Stingley actually played at. So maybe just come back closer to home. It's tough. I mean, I just think that with Will Baker, the way he plays, it's a bad matchup for this Syracuse defense. I don't know that they have a guy that A, can guard him, and then B, I don't know how they're going to respond. Say he hits an early three and they stretch things out. Can the guards stay out of foul trouble and defend the guards and rebound well enough too? That big question marks.
I'm keying in on the rebounding battle too. We've mentioned, how much Syracuse struggled on the boards, particularly in the Maui Invitational first two games. We crunched the numbers. I think it was a combined minus 35. And obviously this is an LSU squad that has some size, and it should be very interesting to see how Syracuse responds in that department as well. Gentlemen, any closing thoughts here before we close up shop? And again, ACC SEC challenge coming up Tuesday night. Maybe there'll be some Roosevelt Street watch parties in Syracuse. We'll have to circle back and see what's going on there in the 315. But that's just gonna about do it for this edition of Red is the New Orange. Again, John Eads, thanks so much for joining us. Sports reporter down in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Make sure you give him a follow on Twitter as well, at John Eads TV. All sorts of great coverage, not just LSU hoops, but really everything in the area. He's got you covered. So check him out. Again, we're on Twitter as well, at F68_Cuse. It's SU, it's LSU. It's coming up this Tuesday. We'll see if the Orange can get back in the win column. Shouldn't say back in the win column, but win 2 straight after taking down Chaminade to close out the Maui Invitational. Yeah, there's an asterisk. There's an asterisk.
The D1 team.
But with John and Ian, I'm Johnny saying so long. Thanks so much for joining us. Enjoy the game this Tuesday.